Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Do you have to sterilize jars before dry canning? And how many oxygen absorbers do you need? And when do you need to use oxygen absorbers? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the process of dry canning is taking something that is dry, a dry product. And I will use something as an example that every prepper more than likely has. Rice or beans, a very dry product that you want to make sure is preserved for decades. Whenever you're going to put that product into a jar, what you're doing is you're trying to keep that product in there away from a few things. From oxygen, number one, so you don't want any air to be able to go in and out of it. And when you store them, you want to store them in a temperature controlled environment. Preferably nothing that goes under 50 degrees Fahrenheit and nothing that goes over 70 degrees Fahrenheit without a quick fluctuation in temperature. Meaning that you don't want your product to go from 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 70 in 1 hour. Maybe over time, 1 degree a day or something like that as it goes, as the temperature changes and the seasons change, that's okay. And also you want to keep sunlight away from it. All right, so why do we want to make sure that we sterilize our jars before we dry can? Yes, we want to make sure that we sterilize them. Why? Because dry canning is a way of keeping bacteria out of that food. So you want to make sure that your jars are very well sterilized before using them for dry canning. Now there's a couple of ways that you can do this. I do it a very simple way. And by sterilized, ladies and gentlemen, I mean clean. I don't mean that you have to put it in an autoclave or a pressure can or anything like that. Normally what I do is I just go ahead and I wash the inside out really good with soapy water. And then I take my jars, put them in a flat pan, and I put them in the oven at about 200 degrees for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then when I'm ready to go ahead and fill those jars, I take them out, I let them cool off for a little bit, I fill them up with whatever product it is that I'm putting in there. I make sure that I use an oxygen absorber, and to be extra cautious, ladies and gentlemen, you can use a food saver attachment to go ahead and suck out any extra air that's in the jar. Okay, this is going to make your oxygen absorbers more efficient at eliminating whatever little bit of oxygen there is in there. Now, how many oxygen absorbers do you need? The rule of thumbs that I use, ladies and gentlemen, is I use 100 cc worth of oxygen absorber for every quart. So if you do the math, there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon, meaning that if you're filling up a 1 gallon container that you're going to use an oxygen absorber with, you're going to need 400 cc's for 1 gallon. And then if you take it all the way up to a 5-gallon bucket, let's say you're putting away rice in a 5-gallon Mylar bag inside of a 5-gallon bucket, you would be using a 2000 cc oxygen absorber. Now, can you get away with using a little bit less? In my opinion, yes. Let's say, for example, that you're filling up a jar, a quart jar with rice. A quart jar, I just said, would need 100 cc. However, that quart jar, after you fill it up with rice, the volume inside of it is only probably going to be about 75% rice and 25% air. So could you get away with using less than 100 cc oxygen absorber inside of a quart jar that you're filling up with rice? More than likely you can. However, I always try to be on the safe side and use what I need to use for that size jar or more. The more, the better. The less, you're taking a chance. Now, what kinds of products do you not want to use an oxygen absorber for, or do you not need to use an oxygen absorber for? Well, it all depends on how long you want to store that product. If you want to store it for as long as possible, you want to use an oxygen absorber. Now, for sugar, you never want to use an oxygen absorber for sugar. Whenever you do this, it does not ruin the sugar. However, it makes it brick hard. So whenever you go to use it, you're not just going to be able to scoop the sugar out. It's going to have to actually be chiseled out of there. So never use an oxygen absorber for sugar. If you vacuum seal it with a jar attachment, you should be just fine. Or if you put it in a 5-gallon bucket, Mylar bag, and then go ahead and get as much air out of there as you can, with your hands before you go ahead and seal it, it should be just fine for a very long time. Another thing that you don't need an oxygen absorber for is salt. Right? Salt, you don't need an oxygen absorber for, right? It's a mineral. It really doesn't need oxygen absorbers because actually bacteria don't like salt. So you should be fine with that as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do your research, okay? Everything that I tell you in these little Q&A videos, these are my opinion and the way that I've done things, and they work for me. Alright, so do your research before you do any of this stuff. And I've always found that when you do your own research, that you really learn a lot more than than just getting the answer from someone telling you. I hope that you got something out of this. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.